Hey. Okay, this week's parsha is Shoftim. Shoftim means judges, and it comes from the first pasuk in the parsha, which says, Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha bechol she'arecha asher Hashem Elokecha noten lecha. Judges and policemen you shall place at all the gates that Hashem your God is giving you. So obviously Nesiv Shalom goes to town on this one, and he basically says that we always read this parsha right before, not right before, in Chodesh Elul, at the beginning of the month of Elul. And he basically is saying that these gates, what are these gates where we have to put judges and policemen? And why doesn't it say, it says, Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha, in the singular, as opposed to, as like a society is supposed to put judges and policemen in their society. It should be more like in the plural, titnu lachem, or as a society you should have judges and policemen just to keep the law. So he explains that really it's talking to every single Jewish person, that they have to put in themselves a sort of mechanism or a system where there's judges and there's police. Meaning, what is a judge and what is a police? What's the difference between them? If you are being judged, you have, like if you're doing something wrong, if you break the law, on one hand you're being judged, meaning you can be taken to court and somebody needs to make a decision if you were doing the right thing or the wrong thing. So it's an evaluation of whether you were doing something good or bad. And then the police, or the policemen, or the executors of the law, are those that create a standard, meaning they make sure, they ensure that you end up keeping the law, or that you pay the price, the consequences for not keeping the law. So they implement the law. So in each and every person's life, we have gates. What are these gates? First of all, a few midrashim say different things. Like Rashi says, there's gates to in your face. There's gates. There's eyes. There's mouth. There's ears. So you need to put a judge and a police there at these gates to make sure that you evaluate if what you see and what you hear and even what you smell and what you taste is okay, is good or bad. That's on one hand. And on the other hand, you have to implement once you made that decision, is it good or bad? You need to make sure that you have a strategy to come up with how you're going to implement this. Make sure that you only see good things, that you only let in to your mouth and you let out of your mouth good things and not bad, and so on. So that's number one. But that a lot of different midrashim say that, and commentaries say that. But Netivat Shalom has this way of looking at it a little bit differently, and he says, there's gates in the year, in the time, there's gates, meaning there's an entryway, and at an entryway to any time period, you need to take stock, you need to reflect, you need to evaluate. Where am I going? If I'm going into this gate, what's my destination? Where am I heading? What would I like to see? What's my goal when I go into it? So Elul is one of those gates, because Elul is the end of the previous year, but it's a gate into the next year. There's a transition period. And this transition period is a time to reflect and to set up judges, meaning you evaluate your year, and you also evaluate yourself and what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. But then you need to implement a system whereby you will carry out that law. So if you have a plan, if you have an evaluation of where you're holding and where you want to get to, you need to also have a police. You need to set up a system, strategies, methods, certain safeguards that will make sure that you don't fall back to the same habits again. So that's number one. Elul is one of those gates. Another gate he's referring to is the gate of the week. Every single week has a gate. And what is that week? What is that gate? It's Shabbat. Shabbat is the gateway between the days of one week to another. Okay? So, and that week, that Shabbat is that which gives you life force and energy for the entire week ahead. So that has to be really careful. You have to be really careful with your Shabbatot. And it's not just about not breaking Shabbat or having the meals on Shabbat or saying Kiddush. It's about creating that sense of ani lidodi v'dodi li, which means creating that relationship, understanding that this is a day that is a very specific, careful day, that you need to make sure that you're in a relationship with Hashem. And so that's the day that you need more judges and more police, okay? And again, it's not the police in terms of like how we feel like he's going to come and give us a ticket or he's going to put us in jail. It's that we need to implement it in practical ways. Another thing he said, it's very interesting. He said that every time period in your life, like you've got the teenage years, right? So like the entryway to the teenage years is very wrought with or fraught with like tension and confusion. Actually, it's interesting. I was just thinking about it now. Like transition in birth is a very scary thing, right? Like it's a very dangerous and very painful and scary time because it's like not one and it's not another. It's a gateway into from one to the other. So that's where you have to be extra careful because you can fall really hard and you could, at the same time, you could go to great lengths and you can grow tremendously and you can achieve great things during that transition period. So that's where you need the evaluation. Also, he says, so when you start your teen years, right? It's like, oh my God, like 12 and 13 is like the worst. It's really the worst. I don't know about you, but like, that's where there's so much, like, I don't know if it's called fear, but it's like, it could be so scary how you're going to become, what kind of a teenager you can become. And my youngest is 13, so I can tell you, there's so many scary things that are happening, right? And it's like so tense because this is where you decide how you're going to end up. It's the beginning, it's the gate. Whatever you make, those decisions that you make now, my friend was just saying today, she tells her kids before they leave the house, make good choices. I'm like, good luck with that. I don't know if that's going to help. But for ourselves, if we can tell ourselves to make good choices, these are the times, the gates, at the transition period between one time period and another. Another time, he says, which can be fraught with confusion and worry, and it could possibly lead to issues, is when you go into middle age. What's a midlife crisis? Why is there a crisis? Right? So a lot of people make those kinds of evaluations because it's a gate from one way to the other. There's transition. There's like all this anxiety that comes up, and you start thinking, where am I going? What am I doing? What's my purpose? Right? So this is a time for shoftim and shotrim, for judges and implementation of your decisions. So make good choices at those times. Is there anything else that he was saying? Also, Rosh Chodesh, before the Rosh Chodesh, it's Erev Rosh Chodesh, has a special power to it because it's the gate, and that's where you need to sit down and evaluate. One more really good point, and with this I will end, is a gate to your actions. When we're doing tshuva in Elul, he says that's why we always read this parsha during Elul. When you're evaluating your actions and your deeds and you're trying to do tshuva, so you need to realize that the gate to all your actions, what's the gate to all your actions? What is that? What do I even mean by that? The gate, or that which leads you into doing all your mitzvot or all your, unfortunately, bad deeds, is your thoughts and your beliefs and your character traits. So your thoughts, your beliefs, and your character traits are the gate to the actions. So if you're going to do tshuva, you better do tshuva on the gate. Meaning you need to put judges and policemen at the gates, which means you have to start evaluating my character traits, because they're the roots of everything that you do in life, and your thoughts and your beliefs. So that's what has to be reflected upon, and that's what we need to do tshuva on. Okay, and just to end with this one last point is that we are still open to you registering for our Elul Reset, which is basically a mind, body, and soul reset. I'm doing it with my sister-in-law, Yardena Slater, and we're still open for registration. So, and I can send you the link to the recording of last night's opening session where it explains what this is all about. But I'm really hoping that this gate, which is Elul, will really be an incredible transition period to the next year, which starts on Rosh Hashanah. So we have 30 days for that, and 30 days we can do a lot. So just PM me if you'd like the registration link. All the best. Have a good Shabbos.